Alright, boils and ghouls. Happy St. Patrick's Day, first of all, for those who celebrate. I'm half Irish and half Italian. I prefer the Irish side. So, I'm big on St. Patty's Day and everything Irish. Blasting Flogging Molly earlier. It's a ritual every year. But it is also Sinister Sunday. So, it's Sinister Sunday brought to you by St. Patrick. He's sponsoring the Sinister discussions today. So, Sinister from 2012. I've talked a little bit about this in the past and recently in a stream or two after I rewatched this. This is what happens, like, after I have a busy week, then I'll take like a week off of just like watching movies. Then I'll like pretty much like form a backlog of the movies that I watched and then go back and like do videos on them. I'm probably going to end up watching Sinister again here, but I got a lot more out of this movie on this rewatch than I ever got out of this movie. Not that I ever had like a dislike for this film or anything. It's just always hit me as just an average, average mainstream horror film. Just like the Insidious franchise, especially the sequels, and a lot of Blumhouse's films from around that era, the early 2010s or so. So this movie was never a film that I loved in any way. And I remember I saw it on a list somewhere, like number 8 on like the 101 scariest like horror movie moment. I said, get the fuck out of here. Are you serious, Sinister? I still don't agree with that at all. But I did have a lot more fun with this. And even with the sequel, which we'll be talking right after this, a little bit after this. Probably a few hours after this. Because that one's a little bit harder to sit through. And I remember it being a total disappointment. And we'll get there when we get to 2, but there are some enjoyable moments. A few things that I always loved about this movie since I saw it in theaters. The atmosphere is fantastic in this movie. At times, it does drag a little, like, it does have some pacing issues, this movie. But when the atmosphere is, like, at its peak, and, like, Ellison's exploring the house in certain scenes, and just there's some good scares in this movie, and the way the tension builds and the feeling of dread throughout a lot of this movie, that's what this movie excels at. That's probably the best thing about this movie, is the feeling of it and the unease that you feel while watching it. And a lot of that has to do with how authentic the tapes are, the snuff films. They were shot on 8mm, so they are Super 8s. And a little bit of trivia, which I think is a really cool way of doing this. They filmed all the Super 8 murder tapes and put the score to them. So it has the loud like score that jumps in for the lawnmower scare. And Ethan Hawke didn't see any of it before filming that scene. So all of his reactions are absolutely genuine. And that freaked the living hell out of him when that music cue kicks in with the lawnmower and he actually got up and freaked out. So that's a great way to get a reaction out of your lead actor. Now, Ethan Hawke is great in this movie. I've said to a few people where it comes up here and there, I'm not a huge fan of his. He's pretty hit or miss for me. There's films I think he does excellent in, and then there's other movies that it's whatever. And The Black Phone is one of them. And that movie is very heavily linked to this movie because it's directed by the same guy. It's written by the same person. I forget the writer. It's like Cargill or Cargill or something like that. That's his last name. But Scott Derrickson is the director. And they both, respectively wrote and directed The Black Phone, which did not work for me at all. So maybe the name Derrickson, after seeing The Black Phone, just like put extra negativity on his name for me. But let's hop into Sinister from 2012, because I got a lot to say about this movie, actually, upon rewatching it. Since I was talking to Ethan Hawke, let's continue with the cast here. I forget the woman's name, Rylance. I forget her first name, who plays his wife. She has some great scenes and great acting throughout this whole movie. But there's some scenes like when she's really like reaming Ellison after she finds out that they're living in the house, that the crime took place and that people were hung from the tree in the backyard. Her performance is excellent in that scene, and so is Ethan Hawke's. But there's some moments in this movie where she really shines, and I don't really recognize her from like much else. But she gives a great performance in this movie. And James Ransone, I didn't care for his character like when I first saw this, and maybe I've only seen this movie like twice since it came out. Maybe this might be like the third time I've seen this movie, but I didn't really care for his character, Deputy So-and-so. For some reason, on this rewatch and of part 2, I love his character. Like, I think he gives a great performance in this movie and in 2. I don't know what the hell I was thinking back then with his whole character, because I absolutely love him. In both of these movies, he has some hysterical lines in this movie, and he carries pretty much the whole second film. And the fact that they just refer to him as Deputy So-and-so, he doesn't have a name, we never find out his name. Pretty sure in the credits for the first movie, they just put him as Deputy. And then they put him as like Deputy So-and-so, or ex-Deputy So-and-so, because he's not a deputy anymore, in the sequel, which is hilarious. 2 other fun tidbits. The writer, he got the idea for this movie after having a dream after watching The Ring remake from 2002. So this whole thing was inspired by a nightmare this guy had after watching The Ring. And number 2, principal photography for this movie. I don't know if they shot the whole thing here, but they did a principal photography for this film in Long Island, New York, where I'm from. So yeah, Sinister repping Long Island. So we open up with the awesome 8mm tape, and we see the family hung from the tree and them all executed like medieval time style. We don't see who the killer is, and I think they do a pretty good job throughout the first like half of this movie of keeping it kind of a mystery that the kids are involved, that like the kids are the ones who committed these murders. And I think it's a very cool looking demon. And the whole idea and concept that he can enter our world from like he lives like in his own little crib in the netherworld, like it's his own little realm, his alternate dimension, whatever you want to call it. So he reigns supreme, he owns it. And he takes these kids and feeds upon their souls like slowly over eternity. So it's kind of like living in hell with Bughuul. Then in the sequel, and we'll talk more about this in the sequel video, but they expand upon this, that it's any type of art could be a portal into or out of, for Bughuul, his netherworld. Like music, because they hear on the phonograph or the CB radio, they hear the piano in the sequel. And like music, any type of art, drawings can be a gateway to or from Bughuul's little dimension, which is a cool idea. But yeah, all the lore and the background on Bughuul and how we are slowly fed it, from Vincent D'Onofrio, who does a great job in this movie too. Unfortunately, he probably cost too much money for the sequel, and that's why we don't get him. We get Discount Jonas. I mean, I have to do it. As good as it looks with the opening, Super 8 kill with the hanging of the family, we know later in the movie that this was the little girl, Stephanie, who, their daughter, I forget her name, who kills them in the end. Obviously, spoilers for both of these movies, if that's not clear at this point. But the little girl, Stephanie, who hung her family here, seems like a lot of work. I don't know if she was able to do all that. Like, by herself? I don't think so. Why not just, chop their heads off or, stab them to death? Do something easy. She went through a lot of work. I just don't believe that she was able to do that by herself. I mean, she's like a 10-year-old girl. I mean, I know that they poisoned some of their parents. They show that. And they do explore this concept in the sequel. It's hard to not jump to the sequel here and there, because they do expand upon some things of that. They do show in that movie that the kids have to make, the best movie for Bughuul possible. So I guess that's why they're always trying to one up the next kid and try to make a better snuff film. But they don't, get into that until the second movie. So I don't know. I'm just saying I don't believe that she fucking did that all by herself. Sorry. So we have the Oswalts moving into a new house. The crime scene of the hanging we see. And this guy's got fucking balls to lie to his wife. And he pulls the technicality card later when they have that great argument. And because she asks him, she says, listen, we didn't just move, down the block or a few houses down from the murder house, from a crime scene. And he says, no, I promise we didn't. And he's not lying. They're not a few houses down. They're in the actual house. But you can't pull that shit in an argument, especially the way she ends that argument by saying, our marriage is, the meaning of your life, not writing. And your kids are your legacy, not your books. You can't come back from that. That's just a showstopper. He has nothing to say to that. But yeah, he pretty much flat out lies to her. And they move into this crime house so he can write his new book. He had a big hit 10 years ago, and he even watches a video of an interview of him back then. It seemed like it was a pretty damn big hit. They even mentioned, right, that it was on the bestseller list. So he had a pretty big spike in his career, and then he hasn't had anything that reached that success ever since. And it seems like he's written 3, 4 at least books since then. Because I know he mentions 2, or the cop, when they're first moving in, mentions 2 of them. Because he said you got Blood Diner, or whatever the name. I'm probably thinking Blood Diner, the slasher, and that's not the name of the book. But whatever it's called, he mentions one of them. So it seems like at least 2 to 3 books he's written since Kentucky Blood, the one that he's famous for. And now he needs money. They need money, the family. And he's pretty much writing this for money and for fame. When he looks at the interview of himself, I like that, because he says that I would cut my hands off before I wrote a book for fame or money. And he gives a look at himself kind of like he resents his past self, because back then he was doing it for the love of it. Now he's looking at that interview when he's in a spot in the present where he's basically, going against all of that. And he's writing this book for money because they need money to survive. And he hasn't had a hit in so long. I like all of that. The sweater he wears through all of this, I don't know, man. I know writers are weird and eccentric, most of them, and they gotta show it a lot of times in movies, but he's in this sweater or whatever for almost the whole film. I also think it's cool that in this film, moving out of the house doesn't help you in any way. It doesn't really help you in any of these movies, but it actually speeds the process up and helps Bughuul possess your kid faster and kill your ass quicker. That's a cool little twist too. The more I'm watching parts of this movie and rewatching it and talking about it, I don't know what the hell was wrong with me back in the day when this came out, why I didn't care for it that much, because this is a great movie. It still has flaws for me, like I said, the pacing a bit, but like I said, this went way up. So the sheriff and most of his department, except for Deputy So-and-so, doesn't want any part of helping him. He says, basically flat out says, yeah, we're not helping you. We're not at your disposal. We're not helping you with any information. They don't want him there. And the whole circus that he brings with him, as the sheriff says. The whole idea of Bughuul being the eater of children and taking them with him, that's a great idea too. I just wish that we spent more time with the kids. Like I said, there are hints, and they do explore it and give us little breadcrumbs very well. I just feel like we should have seen a lot more interaction between Ellison and the kids, especially the daughter, because she's the one that ends up killing the whole family. That's one of the other small nitpicks I have with this still, is they could have developed the kids' characters a little bit better. Ashley is the daughter's name. I don't know how I forgot that. It's my sister's fucking name. Especially with her, because with the son, it's almost like they try throwing a red herring, like the son is going to be the one. As you start finding out more about Bughuul and needs to take her children, you think the son, because he has the night terrors, and you get that creepy ass scene with him coming out upside down, naked out of a box. That's where the real eerie atmosphere shines in this movie. Scenes like that. But I see more of the son than the daughter. I actually forgot the daughter even really existed the last rewatch, up until she paints Stephanie's the dead girl who hung her whole family on the wall. I said, oh yeah, that's right, the daughter, and then she kills everybody. Like, I forgot a lot of this movie. So they definitely could have explored the daughter's character more. Alright, I don't know if this is supposed to show, like, into Ellison's character, how he truly is. That maybe his book means more to him than his kids and his family. But when they're laying in bed, him and his wife, and she starts saying that what if Kentucky Blood like was your 15 minutes of fame, and like what if that's it, you can't keep chasing it forever, you got the kids, you got your marriage, and then she says I can't do this again, and she says if this is, you know, a flop like last time, if things go south like last time, I'm taking the kids and moving in with my sister. Is that fair? And he agrees very, very easily. Like, way too easily for me to believe. That was me? And they were talking about taking my kids away? Yeah, it's not going that easily of just saying, like, yeah, it's fair if this book don't work out, you can take the kids. I don't know about any of that. That kind of angers me. Like, every time I see that scene again. So all the sequences of Ellison watching the Super 8 tapes, some of the best parts of the movie. It has such a tense and eerie atmosphere. It makes you feel very uneasy, and you could see it on Ellison because you can actually see it on Ethan Hawke, so it reinforces that in you, and you see him and his reaction. But the way that they filmed it, the burning of the family in the car and the drowning of the family, like all the different ways that they thought of for these kids to kill their parents and siblings, great ideas. And the lawnmower, of course, is the best one out of all of them. So then Trevor, the son, comes home from school with the mom, and she's bitching like usual. She bitches through this whole movie. I mean, it does get a little overbearing. I mean, she has some tender moments, like when he's drunk later on, like in the chair, after that huge argument. That's a great scene. And she brings him to bed and stuff, and she shows, obviously, she loves him, and they had this big-ass blowout, but she's always going to love him, care for him, and brings him to bed. So yeah, there are some points where, I'm not saying she's not a good wife or anything like that, but she bitches a lot in this film. Sometimes rightfully so, sometimes not. This time rightfully so. I mean, Trevor, she comes home, I don't know why I went on that whole tangent then when she's right here. But the son drew a picture with permanent marker on the board in school of the 4 people hanging from the tree. So I mean, that's something, yeah, that you gotta scold your husband for. I'm sorry, Miss Oswalt. Ooh, I am for real. So then they have a whole argument. And then she now knows that his book is about a family that was hung. She don't notice the big-ass tree, like solitary big tree outside in the backyard, and thinks that maybe this is a house. She doesn't seem like she has any suspicion that they're living in the house until she finds out later, when Stephanie draws the picture. So, I don't know. Maybe she's not the brightest. This movie has great lighting, too. Especially in the sequences with him watching the tapes. Just the way that they show the, you know, the tape player, like, flickering, and the lighting from that, and the lighting on his face, the reflection in his glasses of what he's seeing in the films, like with the throat cut. The first glimpses we get of Bughuul is really cool. That rhymed. With the shot of him that Ellison, you know, pauses and blows up on his computer, that he's in the water, like underwater in the pool during the pool kill. I love his design in this movie. And then later, he has another picture of him up on the laptop, like, and he's on the phone, he's not looking at the screen, and you see Bughuul turn and look, like, right at him, and then turn back to how the image was. That's a cool, creepy scare, too. Like, I like that this movie doesn't use a lot of conventional mainstream horror bullshit jump scares. There's a few, namely the very ending. Like, I don't know why they had to fuck this movie up with such a stupid jump scare to end this movie. Probably because it's Jason Blum. I'm just going to blame Blumhouse because it was probably his idea. I almost guarantee it, because it doesn't fit with this movie, like the ending at all. I also like, and I never noticed this until this last watch, he finds and kills a scorpion in the house, and then when he's up in the attic, he sees a snake, and then he sees the dog later on. And I love that scene. He's trying to, like, reason with the dog. He's like, all right, I just want to get my bat. That way, if you come at me, I can bash your brains. That would be me 100%. That dog is ferocious looking. But those 3 animals later on, after they move and Dr. Jonas gets a hold of Ellison again, he sends him the few old pictures that still exist that are related to Bughuul. And you see all three of those animals. You see a scorpion, a snake, and a dog, which I think is really cool and something, I never noticed. So Ellison's looking around the attic, and then he falls through the hole. And then later on, he sees the picture when he's looking at, like, the footage of his camera on his phone, and he sees the kid's hands, and then the multiple hands of children, and he don't move out immediately. That would be my nope moment right there. I mean, it would probably be earlier than that, but nothing really crazy's happened. But once I see there's a bunch of children, like ghost children hands, there's no way to explain that. I'm out. But he stays for some reason. All about that book, that moolah. And he refuses to go to the hospital, even though he fell through a fucking hole. His legs probably all tore up. And then the dialogue between him and Deputy So-and-so is great. When he's like, you probably have squirrels. He's like, I saw a snake up there. He's like, snake don't have feet. Yeah, it's probably squirrels. Like, you know how squirrels are. It's like, not really. I'm not a squirrel guy. All of the dialogue is great between them. And then, since he's such a big fan, he says, you always put in the acknowledgments, but he doesn't know any of the words. Ellison's feeding him what to say and what he's asking him, like, as he's trying to ask him. And he says, in the acknowledgments, like, you always say that, like, thank you to the blah, blah, blah police department or sheriff department for all their help, or deputy so-and-so. And he gets the name Deputy So-and-so. Which, again, we never get his actual name. But we have a great scene with Dr. Jonas, Vincent D'Onofrio, giving all the lore on Bughuul to Ellison. And he starts piecing things together with Deputy So-and-so. And they know that one of the families lived in the house that a previous murder happened. But that's all they know until, third act of the movie, pretty much. When he finds that there's a second link, then Deputy So-and-so, after he ends up moving with his family back to their old place, and realizes that he put himself, right in Bughuul's path. Deputy So-and-so calls him and says, all of the families, like tracing back to the 60s, every single one of them, after they moved, they were killed. Then a family lived in the house that they were murdered in, they moved, they were killed. Then another family moved there, etc. So I don't know. A lot of this just worked a lot more for me than ever before. Another great tense scene. Really eerie atmosphere. When Ellison's walking around the house with the baseball bat, and you see the dead children, appear. They're not real full jump scares. They're not real bullshit jump scares. It's kind of like Insidious, how Insidious has little subtle scares, like the kid in the corner that you don't see right away. I like how they do it here. It's a lot more subtle. But you see the dead kids creeping all around him. This is where James Ransone absolutely shines in this film. When he comes and he's talking to Ellison about what happened to him the night before, and that he experienced something paranormal or supernatural that he can't explain. And they have that whole conversation, and then Ellison asks him, so you don't believe in any of that otherworldly stuff? And he says, so you kidding? I believe in all of it. It's I wouldn't spend one night in here, are you nuts? 4 people were hung by their necks in the tree in the backyard. That goes on about the girl, who knows what happened to her, God knows what. And then he starts apologizing, I'm sorry. All of that is hilarious, and probably one of my favorite scenes of this movie. So then Ashley paints outside of her room the picture of Stephanie, the dead chick who hung her family outside. And kids are always so nonchalant about seeing ghosts. I guess it's just cool to them. I mean, I know I would be pretty psyched if I had a ghost friend or frenemy, whatever the hell, if it's friendly or not. Just to be able to talk to a ghost would have been cool back in the day, or to spice my early life up. The mom's like, who's Stephanie? She's a girl. She used to live here, duh. That's pretty much what she says. She doesn't say the duh, but it's pretty heavily implied. And he gets the shit scared out of him again. Sees Bughuul real quick. We get the kids in the attic. All of that's really well done too. And the score here is excellent. I'm pretty sure it wasn't written for this movie. I'm pretty sure it's by an electronic band. And it was an existing track that they took and used for this movie. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. It's excellent though. It's just like the tribal drums and stuff, and then you can hear like the old keyboard patch of the like 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 9, 0. It works so well for this film. That's one of the other things I remembered from the theater, from first seeing this, that I really, really liked about this movie. So he burns all the Super 8s, tells his wife, scares the shit out of her, says, we gotta leave now. Get the kids up, pack whatever they need immediately, and we gotta get out of here. They end up leaving, and I love how they toy with your expectations here. When the cop pulls him over, the sheriff, you think that, because you don't know the first time you watch this, that moving speeds the process up. So you think here that they're going to get sent back to the house, or some bullshit's going to come up where they can't leave, and they got to stay in the house, and then something bad's going to happen to them. And then you see, oh no, they actually do move, and maybe things are okay. And then you get the revelation that all the families from Deputy So-and-so, he put the pattern together with Dr. Jonas. They say in the sequel that Dr. Jonas figured out the pattern, but I'm pretty sure Deputy So-and-so does in this movie, because he's the one who calls Ellison. He doesn't say anything about talking to Dr. Jonas. So I don't know if that's just an oversight in the sequel, but he gets the information to him is the point. And Ellison realizes, oh shit. And he looks upstairs in the attic. This would freak me the hell out. Knowing you just burnt the shit out of these tapes, and you go upstairs and you're in the attic of the old house you lived in, and there's the box there, and it's all fine. The camera, the Super 8s. I would freak the hell out. Are you kidding me? That's spooky shit. But then he gets the little envelope that's new in there of the extended cuts, and he ends up putting them together while drinking his coffee. And I like that there's a note from the daughter, from Ashley, that says, "Good night, Daddy," and he doesn't notice it while he's drinking the majority of it, and then he goes over, sits in the chair, watches the extended cuts, and then he puts it together that the missing kids, they were the ones who killed their families. And then he starts feeling all woozy. I'm feeling a little woozy here, for you scream feds out there. And he's screwed. And he was drugged by Ashley. He finally sees the thing. Says, "Good night, Daddy." And I love the line from her, like right before she kills, the whole family. But she says to him, like, "Don't worry, Daddy, I'll make you famous again." Great line. She ends up killing him. There's no happy ending here, and I love it. And then she, like, paints with their blood, like, the walls with different, like, designs, and then, like, the symbol for Bughuul. And then she adds, like, the little drawing of her killing or something to the shoebox that the Super 8s go in. The kids, creepy as hell. They're on the screen. And then I like how they tilt their head. And then she does. And then you see Bughuul behind her. Picks her up, walks into the film, takes her away forever to feast on her soul for eternity. End of movie. It should have ended right there. But instead we get that dumbass jump scare with Bughuul popping out, which again I guarantee you is Jason Blum and Blumhouse. That's the only reason that's there. But yeah, if you can't tell, this movie went way the fuck up for me. So this is one thing I love about rewatches and love about doing the channel, is going through old movies that I haven't seen in a while and then having them go up considerably. And this is another one that did absolutely just that. So Sinister from 2012. We'll get to the sequel, even though we touched a bit on it, but Sinister 2 from 2015, a little bit later. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Hope everyone has a fun and safe day, and I will see you for Sinister 2. Take care, everybody.